I'm grateful to have Nevil Corbeth in the studio today. Nevil is the Vice President of Sales at NFI Canada and has spent his career building high-performing teams, driving strategic initiatives, growing companies, and getting them to a different place. He's led multi-million dollar divisions, coached national key account teams, and exceeded sales targets. Big thing about Nevil, though, is he's passionate about developing people, driving culture, learning leadership, expanding leadership, helping leadership along, and increasing performance in very complex organizations. Nevil, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to hear your voice. And full transparency, Nevil and I have worked together in a past life, and I always got something from Nevil. He's a leader that doesn't panic. He stays cool, and he kind of assesses the situation before he actually gives you his kind of thought process on it. So, Nevil, I'm pretty pumped to have you on the show today.
No, I'm looking forward to it. I've watched a bunch of your podcasts, and it's pretty impressive what you've done. So congrats to you too, man.
Yeah, appreciate you. So, Nevil, let's get right into it. So you've been with different companies, different industries, different sectors. So you've been able to lead multiple sales teams across multiple companies and countries. What's your approach to building a high-performance team culture from the ground up?
Yeah, it's not always easy when you're dealing across different borders, different personalities, different ways of doing business. But the one consistent thing I always try to do is have one scoreboard, one mission for everybody. So if you have a common goal with everybody across the two countries, so in my case, it's always been Canada and the US, everybody's on the same page. Now, I am a big believer in you need to have some sort of camaraderie, but also have a little bit of competition. So friendly competition is never a bad thing. So in my most recent company, before the job I was at, we had the US division, we had the Canadian division, we had national key accounts. We sort of pitted them against each other with some friendly competition and banter that goes on with that, of course.
Yeah, exactly. In sales, great salespeople love competition, right?
Absolutely.
I always say when a list goes up, a great salesperson, they look at two places. For top of the list, then they look at the bottom of the list. So they pray to God they're at the top. They pray to God they're not at the bottom. And if they're middle, they think, okay, how can I figure out a way to inch my way up to get to where I need to go, right?
If they're good, Jason, if they're good.
Yeah, exactly. If they're good. If they're not, then we have another discussion along the way.
100%.
Let's talk about that, because when we're talking about targets and ambitious goals, how do you balance hitting the ambitious targets while maintaining a positive and sustainable team culture?
Yeah, I guess from my standpoint, I think business isn't rocket science, right? I'm not all about making things super complex. It's really, to me, and this was the secret of my success at Labatt when I worked there, it's all about making your calls and then following through. If you do those two things, good things will happen for you, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of one of the things I always preach. I also say, I never sort of rely on one big deal, depending on what role you're in. If you're in a hunter type of role, you can't just go, oh, I've got this one coming. You got to always constantly be working that pipeline and making sure that you and your team are doing that, depending on whatever role you're in, right? Yeah. So that's always a big part of it for me, for sure, in terms of how you hit your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you just said there about the big goal, because there are a lot of people that the leader they put it all on black, and you're just like, no, the red might come up. So let's move the chips around the board a bit so we can help ourselves, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I look at the business I'm in now, and we're dealing with Fortune 500 companies, like the biggest of the big. And, the deals are large, the stakes are large. You can hit your target with one account, but that account might take you a year. And if you're banking on that account hitting and then it doesn't hit, what's your other plan? What's part B or what's plan B? So that's kind of, you can't just put it on all on that one. You got to really be diversified and have a bunch of options.
So what you just said there is you've gained that through experience. So let's talk about experience for a second. So if you could look back on one lesson that you learned about leadership early in your career that still shapes how you lead today, what would that one lesson be?
So one lesson on leadership from my standpoint, I guess it really boils down to what your leadership style is. So from my standpoint, I've always been a leader who listens and will take the time to get to know his people. So from my standpoint, the secret to my success is really that. You've got to listen to what your people are saying. You've got to work with them and try and help them to be the best that they can be. So
Yeah.
to do that isn't always easy. I've always believed, and this may sound a little harsh, I make sure that you take care of your A players
Yeah.
because those are the ones that are going to deliver the goods. Those are
Yeah.
the ones that to me are going to make it happen. So I always make sure those guys are happy, they're doing well, and I've given them the support they need. It's not to say I won't help somebody who's struggling, but those people, sure, they have to be coached, but they've also got to want to be coached. And you have to make sure that you take care of the really good, strong players, work with the lesser lights, let's call it.
Yeah.
And if they improve, then they become a stronger player and they'll be happy for it. But
Yeah.
to me, those are a couple of things that I've kind of always done from a leadership standpoint.
I like what you said there because I work with a lot of leaders. And one of my key beliefs in coaching is a lot of times leaders spend so much time on the C and the D players,
Yeah.
and that's okay. They need to be coached as well. But what happens is, don't kid yourself. The A player actually sees, hey, why is he spending all his time with that C and D player when I'm out here, absolutely crushing targets right now. I'm out here doing the company good. I'm engaged. I'm performing. And sometimes leaders will say, oh, let Sally, don't even worry about her. She's that kind of a performer. Let her go. But Sally still wants coaching. And
Yeah.
I often compare it to a hockey bench or a baseball bench, because I know you coach a lot of baseball, is you still see those star players coming off. You still see Connor McDavid come off, and the coach whispers something in his ear for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And Neville, it might be, that was the best shift I've ever seen in my life. Right.
Yeah.
But that's still coaching, just recognizing and making sure that he knows, hey, I need more of that. Right.
No, 100%. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned baseball. And I'm sure you know who Josh Naylor is.
Yeah.
So I used to coach Josh back in the day. Josh was by far the best player on our team.
Yeah.
And from a coaching standpoint, he wasn't an easy person to coach because he was so talented and he was so far above the other players. And
Yeah.
we had very strong teams. But you know what? Every once in a while, you had to take Josh aside. Hey, have you thought of this? Here's how you can be a better leader. These people are all watching you. Like different things, different little anecdotes like that can go a long way. And I, looking at some of the teams I've had, the strong guys are the ones that in the end, it's the 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
So it's absolutely true.
Absolutely. So let's talk about baseball for a second, because you've coached for over a decade now, right?
Yeah.
What parallels can you bring in that are common with coaching baseball and leading corporate teams?
Yeah, you have to prepare, let's just say. So
Yeah.
as a coach, that was my role. If I had a tournament that I was going into, I was a pretty eager coach, let's just call it that.
Yeah.
I was always tried to be on top of my game. I would go into other websites and try and scope out who the top players were on the next teams we're playing. I also had, this is back in the day, I actually had a binder with every game I coached, and I would put where the guy was hitting the balls and all that and
Love
different
that.
notes in it. And then before the game, I would open up my binder and do a bit of research on who we were playing and the guys to watch out for, all that. So really, it boils down to preparation. You've got to be prepared. So goals are important and practicing is important. And that's, something like that you can equate to like pipeline management. You got to be prepared. You got to manage your pipeline. That's how you're going to win. Everybody's got a role, right? So you've got in baseball, you've got your closers, you got your starting pitchers, you got your position players. In sales, you have account managers, you have hunters, you have different roles like that. There's a lot of parallels for sure between the two.
Yeah. It's amazing how sports and business coincide a lot of times, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And I'll tell you from personal experience of having salespeople come to me in my company and whatnot, or going on a Zoom call or a Teams call with a salesperson, there is a difference between somebody who's prepared relentlessly and somebody who is just winging it.
Yeah.
And you almost, based on our backgrounds and based on leading teams and whatnot, you almost want to say, stop. Just, why don't we reschedule this call? You come back to me when you're prepared and we go from there. But you don't, you let it play through. But it's amazing that even before the call, half hour, 15 minutes of prep work, you sound so much more prepped and educated for that call, as opposed to just going in and saying the old, hey, how was the weekend? How you doing? Right? Yeah.
You mentioned that. I read a lot of books, listen to a lot of audiobooks, all that sort of stuff. And, one of the big things that I've always tried to do, and it may seem foolish, but it works, is you just get in front of the mirror
Yep.
and you sit there and you have talk to the mirror and look at what you're doing, look at what you're saying, and it really does work. So that when you do get in front of an audience, you're prepared and you're not just winging it. Some people have that innate ability to wing it, but me, I got to prepare a little for anything I do.
Yeah. And you know what? It shows in everything you presented. I love the fact that all cars have Bluetooth now, because people will think you're talking on the phone, but I could be rehearsing something before I.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So people think you're talking on the phone, but you could just be rehearsing your speech or your
Yeah.
keynote or your conference, whatever.
Yeah, I've sat in my office and done the exact same thing, like
Yeah.
pretending talking on a call, whatever, and nobody knows. So.
Yeah, exactly. How do you identify or cultivate leadership potential within your team members? How do you kind of see kind of what each person's about?
Yeah, there's no strong and fast rule on that because one of the things I've noticed, Jason, in my career is there's some guys who are really good at sales, and that's what they want to do, which to me, that's great.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to be the next guy. I had this one gentleman who worked for me at Challenger, and he was one of our top salesperson. He wanted to become a manager. So I said, okay, if that's what you really want, we'll make you sort of a player coach. So that's what we did. And he did that for about a year, and he really didn't like it.
Hated it.
He actually ended up leaving the company and going somewhere else. And him and I are actually still good friends, but he went somewhere where he just wanted to sell. He also got paid a bunch more. So I get it.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you say that, because everybody always thinks, hey, the best salesperson should be the sales manager.
Yeah.
Or, they see this, and it's okay to say, you know what, I'm pretty happy in what I do right now. And I'm okay. Not everybody has to be the president of the company, right?
No, exactly.
And then turnover costs companies loads of money. Most people think turnover is, I paid the guy this much times this many days or years that he was there. No, that's not turnover. Turnover is actually, how productive is the team right now? How efficient are we? How engaged are we? How does that drive culture? Culture drives our bottom line. And, I say to the C-suite all the time, it's not a fluke or something lucky that happens that companies with great culture make more money than companies that don't have great culture, right? They work hard at it.
100%.
Yeah, they work really hard at it.
I talked sort of about those people that are happy to be there, but when it comes to cultivating a leader and seeing who those people are, I generally have found that the people who want to go to that next level, they'll let you know, and it's up to you at that point to go, okay, is this something I'm willing to invest my time in to help them get to that next step, or do they not have that ability? Maybe I steer them in a different direction. So it's really something that you listen, you hear what your people are saying. You can also tell if a person is somewhat of a natural leader, as I'd call it, somebody who wants to jump out and grab the horse by the reins, so to speak, and run with things. So there's no hard and fast rule, but those are some of the sort of things I always look for.
Yeah, and what's been consistent in every answer you've said, which I really appreciate and I like, is you talk often about listening.
Yeah.
And I think that's a skill. It's a muscle, right? Yeah. It's a muscle. And I think sometimes that muscle can go weak sometimes if we don't practice it, right? And sometimes it's just okay to sit back. I don't have to speak right away. I'm going to digest what you said. I'm going to ponder. I'm going to reflect before I actually respond.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about growth. And during periods of rapid growth, which you've experienced in many different positions, like scaling your logistics teams, etc., how do you ensure the company culture doesn't get lost? Because when pressure increases, sometimes you get that person saying, oh, we used to do it this way, or never used to be like that. So how do you keep that company culture alive and well when there is rapid growth and we have to act a bit differently?
Yeah, culture is something that, I look, again, just reflecting on my Challenger days, we were focused on people, customers, profit. Those are the three things that our president really pushed down on us. And if you stay true to the values of the company, take care of your people, make sure your customers are taken care of, they're being listened to, you're doing what they need, and you're obviously producing for them. And then the profit was the third segment. The money takes care of itself. So you got to make sure you're doing well. But really, the culture shouldn't change just because you've gotten bigger. You should be able to actually enhance your culture, because arguably you can bring more people in who can help out, more HR type of people, and more strong leaders that can, as long as you're getting the same message across to everyone, I think that's really is what's key.
Yeah, and I often say winning's fun, right?
Oh, 100%. Winning takes care of a lot of problems, that's for sure,
Yeah.
And you see that in the transportation industry. When times are good, They're really good. But when the market goes a little south, then all of a sudden everyone starts to, okay, we got to cut back here, we got to cut back here. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think that's what ends up hurting you more is, you pull back too much, you're not spending, you're not as aggressive, and
Yeah.
that can hurt you too.
Yeah. I often say sales hides all sins,
Yep.
right?
100%.
It is evident when sales are going well, we kind of look the other way or we kind of turn a blind eye to something that might be happening. But
Yeah.
it's sales and winning helps culture for sure. Well, can you share an example of a time you turned a struggling team or employee into a success story and what your approach was?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody who was struggling. Yeah, okay. I won't say any names, obviously, but I
Yep.
had a gentleman who he was a decent salesperson. I could see a lot of potential in him. So at that point in time, he would have been, let's call him a C player.
Okay.
But I saw the potential, kind of like a diamond in the rough type of person. So at that point in time, if you see the potential, and really from my standpoint, again, you can coach a person on and teach them how to learn whatever product you're selling. You
Sure.
can't really teach the aggressiveness and enthusiasm and all that sort of stuff. So from my standpoint, if I've got a person who's going out there, they're making their calls, they're doing, I'm big on CRMs. They're inputting their data into the CRMs. They're doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing. They've had a few opportunities, just haven't been able to hit on them. That's a person who needs some help.
Sure.
And so those are the types of people I'll work with. So I had a gentleman who he was in that camp, and I was able to sort of coach him. I asked him to bring me on a couple of calls, showed him sort of how I would work some stuff. So kind of brought him along that way. And before too long, he kind of learned the way that we did business in our organization. And a lot of the times in companies I've been in, you need to really work internally on the sale as much as externally. So
Absolutely.
you sell it internally, you sell it externally. And, that person really progressed over the years. He ended up becoming a director for me and
Oh, wow.
went lights out. So
That's great. Don't you love it when you see somebody like that and you just think, you know what, they just need a nudge. They just need some
yep,
help. And kudos to him too for
yep,
taking the coaching, right?
yep,
Because some people you're just like, hey, I'm not doing this because I have all the time in the world. I'm doing this because I'm trying to get you to a better place so you can actually enjoy work a little more and figure this out. You said something there about behaviors and you were talking about aggressiveness. I love that because I'm a big believer in people have drives. If I'm driven for something, that means I need something. And if I need something, I'm going to behave a certain way. Right.
yeah,
So, in somebody that is proactive, I know that they need independence, but they also are impatient for results. So it's, that's your typical hunter sales rep,
yeah,
right? So it's evident that you kind of see that and you're able to pick it out, which is nice because a
yeah.
lot of leaders kind of just don't understand why is this person behaving the way they do, right?
No, 100% agree with you.
How do you celebrate the wins and recognize your team in ways that genuinely build morale and loyalty, but not, I'm going to add something to that, not monetary.
Yeah,
So it's easy to make people morale go up and loyalty when, here's a big fat check, right?
yeah.
But when you don't have that big fat check or that kind of money that you can transfer them, how do you celebrate those wins along the way to make sure that those two buckets are growing?
Yeah, money's great. Money's always, everyone says that's what everyone wants is money. Recognition goes a long way. So in a meeting, it can be as simple as, hey, so-and-so did a great job with this. Tell me how you did that and explain to your peers and you give them a bit of recognition. That goes a long way. With my management team at my last job, I have a boat. So I said, guys, we're going to go have a meeting in Point Edward where my boat is. We're going to have a
Nice.
meeting there for a day. And then the next day, we're going to go out on my boat. We'll have a fun day and have a good time. So, that was a little innovative, I guess. But, those are the types of things like I'm putting myself out there. I'm showing them I'm a real person. And those types of things I think go a long way.
I love that stuff. Yeah. And I'm a big believer that people remember adventure and experiences, right? They don't always remember what you gave them, but they
Yep.
always remember how they felt when they were around you in a certain situation. And that comes from experience and adventure along the way.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Yeah.
let me throw it back at you. You got to go on some pretty good trips to
Yeah.
interesting beer events and different things like that. I'm sure you love those. Those went a
And I
long way.
remember those. I don't just remember them. I remember certain conversations I had with
Yeah.
people when we were in pubs. I remember certain scenes in the street. I remember all that stuff because, again, you're right. It was an adventure. It was experience.
Yeah.
People live for that stuff. In our company, we do something called President's Club. And if you hit your target, we take you and your spouse away for a fun getaway for 4
Yep.
days. And we like to actually reward that, right?
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
run one of those at Labatt. So, hey, there you go. Good for me.
It's pretty cool stuff. Nevil, looking back at your career, what would you say is your core philosophy for leading people and shaping culture in any organization?
I'd say, again, it boils down to openness and honesty. So when
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a person, I'm just going to tell you the way it is. You might not always like it, but hopefully you will respect it and you'll appreciate the fact that I had the guts to say something to your face. And it's just the way I am. I will tell you the way that it is. And, I think that's worked for me very well over my years because when I left my last company, I had 25 people that reported into me. Every one of them reached out and said, "Hey, it was great working with you. I really enjoyed my time with you. You're a good leader. And, you taught me something." That's something else I always try to do. Like, I always tried to teach. I've got a lot of experience. Lord knows I've learned some things the hard way over the years.
Yeah.
But if you, as a leader or as a coach in baseball, whatever it is, if you share those experiences and you become a real person to people, they want to approach you, they want to talk to you, and they're happy to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was assuming you were still in your 20s. That's why when all this experience, I was thinking, how did you have that when you just in your 20s? Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Nev, you've been more than generous with your time today. So I just want to close it up with a question. And if you were speaking to a young leader today, somebody who's just come in at a university or they're just in their first job and whatnot, what would be the one piece of advice that somebody senior like yourself would say, hey, you know what? This is what I think you need to kind of hone in on or do to make sure that you can have a really good career and kind of climb those ranks. What would that piece of advice be for me?
So from my standpoint, it would be, and I taught my kids this. I said, listen, don't learn things the hard way. What you want to do, you want to listen to what somebody who's got experience says and listen to what they say, because it might save you a lot of grief. It might save you a lot of time, but take it with a grain of salt, because not every person out there is the smartest person out there. So they might give you advice. It could be bad. So listen to what they have to say. Don't learn things the hard way, but take it with a grain of salt.
And isn't it amazing how you wrapped up this conversation with talking about listening again? I absolutely love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that trait about you. So, Nevil, thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy executive in a big company and whatnot, so I appreciate your time and I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. If you loved that session and that conversation as much as I did, would love to have you join our People Playbook community in the link below.